Joining me today virtually is John Morgan, the disseminator of all things MMA. John, thanks for making the time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. Proud to be here, man.
Yeah, I mean, you know better than me, but MMA Junkie is probably like the news source for MMA, huh?
Yeah, no, man. It's something that we've been working on for a long time, man. I've been a part of the company for, gosh, man, I guess about 14 years at this point. I was the first employee that they hired. The founders are unfortunately no longer with the company,
Hmm.
but I was the first employee the three of them hired, and so I've been with them for a long time. And man, we've worked hard. We've tried to build that reputation as kind of being the source of record, and making sure we do things the right way and conduct ourselves professionally and have a solid product. And man, the efforts paid off, and we have a pretty solid reputation in the industry, which is nice to have.
Yeah, big time, man. And you originally were working at in Dallas, right? For Dallas News, somewhere I
Yeah,
forgot the name. But yeah.
so it's an interesting story how I got to being a journalist because I went to school for journalism,
Okay.
and was something that I was interested in. I was involved in like the high school newspaper and yearbook and stuff like that. So it's something I wanted to do. Then,
Hmm.
but basically put myself through college working in restaurants. And there came a time where I could either go, work for the Dallas Morning News for $25,000 a year, or I could be a restaurant manager for $50,000 a year. And I was like, I'll take the 50. You know what I mean? So yeah, just kind of went in that path and stuck with it for quite some time. Man, I ended up, being like the youngest general manager in the company at 24 years old, and it had a good track record going on there, man. I mean, it was a good company. I started with them as a server and ended up being a general manager, and things were good. But I got to a point where I said, this isn't what I really wanted to do. Like I just did it because it was paying more money at the time, and not that I didn't like the restaurant industry. I did actually, I enjoyed it. But I was like, man, I don't want to do my whole life and just do this.
Hmm.
And so I reached out. I happened to see on a message board, actually, MMA Weekly message board, uh, gorgeous George Garcia, who's part of MMA Junkie Radio now. He's part of Tag Radio back then. But he was like, hey, we're looking for somebody to help kind of recap our interviews and produce content for MMA Junkie. And I was like, I'd never even heard of MMA Junkie at that time. They were just kind of starting up, but I reached out and was like, I'd like to get back into writing, eventually, hopefully maybe some actual reporting and journalism stuff, but at least just get back into writing. And luckily, Dan Stupp over at MMA Junkie, he talked to me and interviewed me, and he's like, let's do it. So we started out as just a free gig. It was a volunteer gig, man, kind of an internship, just do like, a piece a day or so, kind of recapping their interviews and putting them on the website. And then that free gig turned into a part-time gig. And eventually the part-time gig became full-time. I quit my job in the restaurant business and took a dramatic pay cut to do it. But I
I'm
was like, you
sure.
know what, man, I want to chase this. This is something I love. I want to do it. And at the time I said, well, restaurants will always be here. I can always go back to the restaurant business. Of course, that was pre-pandemic, you know what I mean? Where I think it's tough. I mean, this was,
Yeah.
15 years ago. But I just thought, hey, I could go back if things go bad. But fortunately, man, I haven't had to go back, man. It's 15 years later. Here's what we're doing.
That's pretty crazy. So you're doing both things initially, right? You said while it was free, then it was part time. How are you able to manage both those things?
Yeah, it was tough, man. So at first I was just, restaurants, if anybody doesn't know, they're long days, 10, 12 hours are pretty routine, pretty common. And then I'd just come home from the 10, 12 hour day and I'd spend 90 minutes or 2 hours, banging out an interview recap. And so I just do it every day, just made for longer days. And then when it became a part-time gig, fortunately, my company that I work for, I had a good relationship. My boss, my regional partner at the time, is actually still one of my best friends. And I told him kind of what I wanted to do. I was like, look, I want to try to take on this part-time gig. And he knew how much I love the sport. He knew how much I loved, writing and that sort of thing. So he kind of understood. But basically, I promoted my assistant general manager above me. So basically,
Hmm.
I basically took a step down, and I was like, look, let's put this guy, because being a general manager, I had to be in the store on the busiest days. So and obviously weekends, that's what MMA is. So, I said, look, I'll promote this guy above me, but I'll still help run things in the back. I'll make sure that this guy doesn't fail. I know how everything's done. I'll basically just be the quasi general manager, but he'll be the general manager in title. And Mark Myers, who's like I said, still my good friend to this day, he's like, all right, let's do it. If you want to try that, let's go. And so we did that for about 6 months. And that's when I finally got the full-time job offer from MMA Junkie. And like I said, a full-time job offer, I mean, it was like half the salary I was making at the time. But you know, at the time, fortunately, I didn't have kids. I have a son now. I didn't have a mortgage. You know, I had a 1-bedroom apartment that the lease was kind of running out on. And I always say, man, like, if put in that position again now, you know, with a mortgage and a kid, I don't know if I could do it anymore, man. To say like, yeah, I'll take a cut in salary, you know, in half, just because I want to chase this dream. I'm not sure I could do it, but it was just the right time, and I had to roll the dice. But man, you know, I'm so glad I did.
I always have a sense of admiration for people that have such a passion for something like that, where they're already working somewhere, making more money than what it is that they want to do, and then that opportunity of what they want to do presents themselves, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. They take the pay cut, and then they go do it. And like you said, for you during that time, that situation helped allow you to do that. And given where you're at now, maybe not be able to do it now. But I feel like even now, where I'm personally like in that situation where maybe I could afford to do that, I still don't know if I would. It's because it's a terrifying prospect.
It's terrifying, man. It's absolutely terrifying. But you know what? It's such a cliche. You know, when people say if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. You know what I mean? Like, and man, I know it's hard. That, like, man, like I said, I would like to think that I would, if I found another passion, I would like to think that I'd still try to do it. But I get it, man. People are in situations where it's like, you don't want to take that shot. You don't want to take that risk. But man, if you can just take that leap of faith, man, and do it. Because it's like, when you really want something, it's like you're going to find a way to make it happen. You know what I mean? You're not going to let somebody tell you no. You're not going to let somebody shut you down. You know, you're just going to keep chasing because you got that passion. Whereas if you're doing something you don't really love, I mean, are you going to have that drive? Are you going to have that determination? Or are you just going to kind of clock in, clock out, do your thing? So, man, I know it's scary, man. It is scary. And I fully admit that I don't know that I could do it again. But I highly encourage anybody that's thinking about something like that to pull the trigger on it, man. Give it a shot. Like, at least, even if it fails, I mean, gosh, you hope it doesn't fail, but at least you know you tried, man. And that's
Right.
what I think that's what stood over me. I was like, man, I don't want to look up. And it's funny, at the time, I remember saying, like, I don't want to look up and be like 40 years old, which I'm 42 now, and say, you know, I didn't try it. You know, I didn't at least give it a shot. You know what I mean? I think I would, if I was still a restaurant manager, you know, maybe my life would be fine, and maybe I'd have more money in the bank or whatever. I don't know. But man, I think I'd be kicking myself going, damn, dude, I never gave it a shot, you know? And like I said, fortunately, it paid off for me.
Yeah. Now you're like the guy to get the news from all things MMA.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. It's been a long road to get here, man. But it is pretty cool when people know, like, hey, man, like you get that first question. You know what I mean? They know who you are when people say, like, man, they appreciate your work. You know, thank you for what you do. Like, that's so rewarding, man. That's so cool to hear. Like, when people reach out on social, I'm not always a fan of social media. There's a lot of jackasses on there too.
Yeah.
But, you know, when people reach out and then, you know, they know you just because of the sound of your voice, or they know you as the, you know, kind of ever-present, you know, person at the, I mean, and they tell you how much they appreciate what you do. That's really cool, man. It's very rewarding when you hear stuff like that.
Yeah. So where'd the passion for MMA come from?
You know, it's funny, man. When I was a little kid, I liked like pro wrestling, like WWE, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Saturday night's main event, you know, Macho Man Savage, and, you know, all those guys, you know, Hogan and the Giant. And then I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. I figured out it was fake, and I was like, "Damn it!" You know, like I thought this was cool. As soon as I realized it was fake, I was like, "It's not entertaining to me anymore." But what kind of like really ignited my passion was through a chance encounter, man. Just a friend of my mom's actually, who's here right now. We got to go to a gym opening, and it was Guy Mesger, who would eventually go on to fight in the UFC. I grew up in Dallas, and he was in the Dallas area, and he opened a gym. And there was a tape of Muay Thai from Thailand. This was kind of pre-MMA day, so he was opening up a kickboxing gym. And but I saw Muay Thai from Thailand, and I was like, oh my God, that's what a fight looks like. Like, these dudes are going at it, elbows, knees. I'm like, this is real. And it just lit this passion in me. I was like, that is legit, you know? And so that kind of got me involved in following his career a little bit, which led to Pancras over in Japan, the UFC, and really kind of opened my eyes to all that. You know, the UFC came out, and I didn't see the first one live. I mean, I was a kid. The first UFC I ever went to was UFC 16. But I didn't see the first ones live because I was just I think I was like 15 when the first one came out. But like a lot of people, man, I saw the tapes at Blockbuster, you know, the old school VHS tapes at Blockbuster. And once I saw it, man, I just couldn't get enough of it. I was like, this is crazy, man. Like, this is, you know, you see Royce Gracie and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the way grappling changed all of our understanding of what martial arts was. You know, up to that point, everybody thought, you know, kung fu, karate, you know, who had the best style, but it was all striking, you know. And then you saw Royce Gracie in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you go, oh my God, you got to be able to grapple. You got to know this, or it's not a real fight. So yeah, man, it was just the passion was always there for me. But in the early days, I never thought of it as a potential career. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't an industry; it was just a spectacle. You know, so I loved it. And you know, I played a lot of sports growing up, and like I said, once I realized I wasn't going to be a good enough athlete to be a pro athlete or anything like that, I thought, well, at least I can be involved in it. You know, I can write about it and report on it, and that would still be a way for me to be involved in sports. And yeah, but I never thought MMA, because it wasn't an industry, man. It was just it was a wild west, man. It's crazy, you know. It's funny. My wife now, when we were dating back in like 2008 or so, I put on the first UFC because she'd never seen it, and she was just kind of learning mixed martial arts. I was like, I put in the first. I was like, you never seen the first one? Let's watch the first UFC together. I put it in. I was like, holy crap, this was brutal. Like, what? Like, you know, back when nobody's wearing gloves and they're doing no real rules. And man, I was like, I don't know how I like this, dude. This stuff's kind of violent, but it did, man. It always stuck with me. And man, I love the sport. Like, I really do love the sport. But what I love probably even more is just the people, like the athletes that are involved in it, man. Like, the sacrifices they have to make. I mean, the commitment that it takes to be successful in it. Man, they're special people, you know, and I enjoy kind of meeting them and helping tell their stories.
Have you so while you've been a journalist, you've only covered MMA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Full MMA.
Do you know, I'm sure you probably do, any other journalist friends that cover other sports?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, but shoot, there's very few. Man, I'm fortunate. There's very, very few people that can make an actual real living only covering MMA. You know what I mean? Like, so even here in Vegas, you know, like Kevin Iole, you know, legendary he's a legendary boxing reporter as well. So he still covers boxing. You know, Adam Hill, that works for the Las Vegas Review Journal here in Vegas. He also covers the Raiders now. The Raiders have moved to Vegas, so he's kind of more of a general sports type guy. So, yeah, definitely seen, you know, and I've done a couple other things here and there. Like, I like soccer as well. I really like soccer. Real Madrid came to do a basically like to do like a little exhibition game, and I went to that just to cover it for USA Today. It was such a different experience. It's so crazy, man. Like that's what's the horror stories you hear about, like dealing with athletes in other sports versus MMA, where they're incredibly accessible, incredibly kind. It's so nice, man. Like sitting down there, like it was so funny after the game. They had like a mix zone where like the players would all walk by and you could set up there and try to ask questions, but they didn't have to stop. There was no requirement for them to stop and talk to anybody. So literally, like all the media is standing there, like trying to ask them, they just literally just walk right by you. I'm like, what are we doing here? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was trying to get at. It's like, so like you mentioned the accessibility and just how the fighters are in general, like the personality wise and all that. So I was curious to know if you've experienced or know through another person what it's like dealing with other sports athletes compared to MMA. So there you go.
Dan Stupp, who actually who helped start MMAJunkie, who was the original editor-in-chief of MMAJunkie. He actually worked, I want to say, for like 10 years for the Cincinnati Reds. So he had some great behind-the-scenes story of like Major League Baseball and basically just how spoiled they all were. You know what I mean? A bunch of spoiled millionaires. So yeah, man, it's amazing the dealing with the athletes in MMA. Man, they're all just awesome people.
Well, I think what I would think would be one reason for that is like you just don't know when is your last fight, and you know I'm sure there's an elements of that could translate to other sports as well. But just for various reasons, like the Bellator, UFC, whoever, the league just might cut you after a fight if it's a bad performance, or you just might get pummeled so badly like you're just not the same after. Or you just have a really bad injury. You just don't know, and then that could be the only reason. So I think you just enter with maybe a little more humility, perhaps, as opposed to other sports where you have like an entire season. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think the humility is kind of inherent in the sport because, like, you know, when you lose a game, like whatever, you lose a game when you come play the next day. When you lose a fight, you get your ass kicked in front of thousands of people. You know, you get knocked out in front of your friends and family. You know what I mean? Like, it's a humbling experience. So yeah, that's why I think very few fighters have like these kind of massive egos. I mean, I think they get it. Man, like when you have a bad day, it's a really bad day, and it's kind of what makes it an amazing sport, man. It's the highest of highs, that feeling of victory, but it is the lowest of lows, man. That feeling of just despair after a loss. I mean, it can be mentally very, 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 very difficult. It's much more of a mental test and drain than I think people realize. I mean, yes, you got to be in great physical shape, but man, you got to be pretty strong mentally as well.
Yeah, I can only imagine the emotional and plus obviously the physical toll it takes after a loss because, like for example, so I'm Armenian. So when Edmund was fighting, a couple weeks back, like we had like a whole gathering, at our place, and when he lost, though I was fairly upset. Obviously, it's not going to be to the extent that he was, but I caught myself for a second. I'm like, dude, if I'm this pissed off, and this upset, and like this like feeling like defeated or whatever. I can only imagine what the actual fighters are when it's them that it happens to. They're the ones taking the physical punishment and then dealing with the mental toll after.
That's it, man. It's like you said, the physical punishment is there, and that's rough. But that stuff heals up. But it's that mental, of just dealing with the defeat. There's nobody else to blame. It's not that your defender had a bad day, or if that wide receiver just would have caught the ball. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it's on you. Like, you went out there, it's 1-on-1, and you came up short. This guy was better than you that night. And then you think about too, like the way the contracts are set up in the UFC. You get your show money, and then you get your win money. So now you're talking about you lost half your paycheck too. I mean, it's not you didn't really lose half. You never had it, but that's definitely the way they look at it. Is you lost half your paycheck. Man, like you hear the horror stories, like when people win, their phone won't stop blowing up with texts and tweets and whatever else, and when you lose, you don't hear from nobody. You know what I mean? You don't hear from nobody at all, and then you're all alone in the locker room. I mean, dude, it's literally the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, man. It's an emotional sport like no other, man.
And you can sometimes see the mental toll of it trickle over to the next fight. I was going through, because I have Fight Pass, so I was going through Francis Ngannou's fights. I can't remember off the top of my head who his first loss was, but the fight after, or at least when he was fighting Derek Lewis, for example, that was one of the most bizarre fights I've ever watched. Because you have two absolute powerhouses. I think Ngannou was coming off his first loss, and then Derek Lewis, I think, had an injury, and that combination ended up being like maybe the most boring fight I've ever watched, with two of like the most terrifying human beings on the planet.
Literally one of the worst fights in UFC history. And as you said, not only is it one of the worst fights in UFC history, but it's like when they booked that fight, everybody was just like, oh, like this fight is going to be amazing. It's going to be crazy. And then, yeah, it was awful. So you're right, man. It's mentally, man, it weighs on you, like, your willingness to engage, your willingness to trade, what happened last time. I mean, it's such a mental sport, man. And I don't think sometimes people realize how much that really factors into it.
Yeah. So you're doing commentating now too, right? For the CFFC. Do you do every event?
Starting to, yeah. It was, man, I did a lot years ago. I've done Tough Enough, which is an amateur promotion here, like pretty much the whole time I've lived here in Las Vegas, which is cool. Like, for instance, Ronda Rousey, I got to call like 2 of her amateur fights before she ever even turned pro, so it's cool. I got to see a little glimpse of that. So I did that. It done some other ones as well. I did some Tachi Palace fights, M1 Global, Titan FC. So I'd done a handful of them, but for a while it was deemed a conflict of interest with USA Today, our employers, and I didn't necessarily agree with that. Fortunately, we got to a contract position where they said, no, it's okay, you can do it, it's not a conflict of interest. So pick back up with CFFC, and should be doing pretty much every event now. I think we got 2 more scheduled in September. I should be there. I think I'm going to miss October because if I'm right, I think I'm going to be back in Abu Dhabi for the Fight Island events. So I'll have to miss a handful of them every now and then. But otherwise, yeah, I love doing commentary. Me and CM Punk over at CFFC, man, it's hilarious, man. I love doing it, man. I never thought I'd be working with the guy. He's such a cool dude to work with.
That one. So this most recent one, it was where was it? Was it in Philly? Because I was listening to your last road show. I mean, you didn't know where you were, but you were somewhere around there.
I think we were actually in New Jersey. I wasn't sure, but yeah, I was in Philadelphia. It was so crazy. It was cool, man. So with pandemic MMA being the way it is, like there's no tickets to sell, so there's no need for prelims really. So what they're doing is they're breaking it up into 2 main cards on back-to-back nights, and so that way Fight Pass gets a nice little 2.5 hour show on 2 nights of the week rather than either prelims that you don't show or one really long event. So we're gonna do the same thing in September where it's like a 5 or 6 fight card 2 nights in a row. So that was in Philadelphia, 2300 Arena it was called, which Punk was telling me afterwards. He had wrestled there a whole bunch, like on the indie circuit coming up and stuff. So it was cool, man. It was the first event I had called with no fans. I had been at a bunch. Obviously I'd been at the UFCs in Florida, the UFCs here in Vegas, obviously in Abu Dhabi as well. But it was the first time I was on commentary. It is a weird feeling, man, because like I didn't think about it. The first show, like after we got done, like a bunch of people walked up and they're like, man, it's really cool that we get to hear you. It makes it more interesting. I was like, oh, damn, I didn't even think about that. Like, yeah, everybody's listening to every word we're saying.
Yeah. So and then sorry, you said you've been doing that one for how long now? The commentating.
Yeah, so we started early, like last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been picked back up for about a year. Obviously, we got put on hold like everybody else did, from March. But yeah, I'd say I've probably been working with them for about a year now.
Do you see anything like translating? So from you, obviously you're a journalist, so from your writing, from your interviewing, is there something from that you felt helped transition to the commentating side?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Because to me, a lot of the commentating is, yeah, sure, about calling the action and describing the action. But to me, it's about telling the story of the fight. You know what I mean? Like, what does this fight mean? What is, what are the stakes here? It's one thing to just watch a fight. I mean, it's like, I love the sport of MMA, and you just pick two random people and put them in a cage and let them test each other. Like, I enjoy that. But I enjoy it a lot more when I'm like, this guy's on a 3-fight winning streak, going to win here, could potentially get him called up to the UFC, or this guy right here lost his first fight as a professional last time out, and we're going to see how he rebounds here, or what's going. It's like all those little things, like, and so I, to me, it's just telling the story. Now you get to do it verbally instead of in written fashion. So I think that helps a lot. It's just giving a viewer some stakes, a reason to care. Like, why do I even care about this fight? Well, let me tell you why you care about this fight, because here's what's on the line for each of these two individuals. And I think, more so than just describing what we're going to see, it's, hey, here's what you can expect to see, and here's why it matters. I think that's a big part of it. So I think they kind of go hand in hand, to be honest.
Yeah, and I believe you were saying on your show, so there were 6 fights and 5 of them had first round finishes.
Yeah, man, it was just flying along, dude. It was weird because I didn't think I'd feel rusty, man. We hadn't called fights together in 6 months, and Punk actually said the same thing afterwards. Like, he was like, dude, we'll just jump right in. We got this. But it had been so long that we hadn't really worked together, and and it was a little bit different because we were a little further apart than we normally are, because obviously the social distancing involved. And we were both a little bit rusty, which is fine. But if you had more action to call, like, there were longer fights, like, I think you would knock the rust off a little faster. Instead, it was like, boom, done, boom, done. So it's exciting because you're getting big finishes. Nobody, like, everybody likes a good back and forth fight, and some of the most epic fights ever, go to decision, go to the judges' cars. But come on, let's be honest. It's like the home run in baseball or something. You know what I mean? Like, you're tuning in to see the finish, man. You want to see the knockout. You want to see the submission. So it was great to get those 5 of them in a row. It was fun, especially great when you consider we don't get paid by the hour. So the faster we can get done, man, it's good. But man, in terms of like knocking the rust off, it was a little rough.
That's funny. And that was what day of the week was that? Was that during the 252 or was that before?
Yeah, so it was Wednesday night and Thursday night. So my week that week was amazing, man. I felt so cool, so fortunate to do this. Tuesday night in Vegas, Dana White's Contender Series. Fly out Wednesday morning to Philadelphia. Call fights Wednesday and Thursday. Fly home on Friday, and then it's UFC 252 on Saturday. So I'm at 4 different fight cards in the span of 5 days, man. It was I'm like, dude, people complain about oversaturation. I'm like, nah, dude, give me something to do every day of the week, man. I'll take it.
That's a pretty busy week.
It was a busy week. By the end of it, I was a little tired. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a cool week. I mean, think of all the fights I'm gonna get to see. And yeah, by the end of it, I was like, dude, I just want to go to bed. I'm exhausted, man. But it was cool. It was a cool week.
I didn't catch the post conference for 252. So you were covering 252 at the Apex?
Yeah, I was inside the Apex for the fights, and then after the main event, I went out to the media tent and did the post fight stuff there.
How'd you feel about it? How'd the event go for you?
It was good, man. It was good. Daniel Cormier didn't come talk to us after the fight. He had to go get his eye checked out. And I think, if it hadn't been for the injury, I think he would have, especially considering, it looks like, it's definitely going to be his last fight. It was unfortunate. I mean, I think I kind of knew going in. I was telling people beforehand, like, I think my heart wants Cormier to win because, like, you want that nice, like, fairy tale story, the ending, guy raises the belt at the end and that's how he leaves off into the sunset. I mean, you want that especially for a guy that's that nice, I mean, he's just such a good dude. But, age catches up with you and listen, Stipe is a great fighter, and it wasn't, to me, it wasn't the most, exciting fight of all time, but I mean, obviously there were stakes on the line. And Stipe did what he had to do to win the fight. So kind of an unfortunate ending. And, the eye poke made it really, really unfortunate. But to be honest, like I thought Cormier won the 4th round, which is the round immediately after he got eye poked, because at the end of the 3rd. And at that point, I think, Stipe had already shown his path to victory. He'd already made it clear that he wasn't going to be taken down. He made it clear that he was actually able to control things in the clinch, and was doing better in the grappling department than I thought he would. And Cormier had some success with kind of slipping and moving and throwing the right hand, but and it wobbled Stipe a couple times, but never dropped him or seriously hurt him. So I don't know. I felt the eye poke. You definitely can't say it didn't factor in. Of course it did. I mean, not being able to see, that's going to change some things.
Yeah, he said he was blind pretty much out of that eye.
That's it. You know what I mean? So, like, you can't say it didn't affect things because a guy can't see. That's obviously affecting it. But at the same time, I think it would be disingenuous to say, like, that's the only reason he won the fight. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think so. I think Stipe was already en route to victory at that point anyway. So, yeah, man, it's tough to see Cormier go out like that. But listen, it's just rare that you get to finish in the sport on top. That's it just doesn't work that way. That's why so few people have done it.
Yeah, I was because I had been listening to, because obviously DC has his show on Mondays with Helwani, and he had mentioned it there. I think he had even mentioned maybe on other broadcasts when he was commentating. He's like, I think I have the upper hand in this one because the Apex's cage is smaller. He's like, I'll be able to wrestle him, this, that, and I'm watching the fight. I'm like, man, he didn't even get to do it once.
I know, and that's why to me, like, as the fight was going on, I'm like, he just doesn't have it tonight, man. Because I thought the same thing. The smaller cage, I thought exactly that, man. To me, that smaller cage definitely favors grapplers because they don't have to chase you down as much. There's less real estate to cover, and as a striker, you're going to run out of room a lot faster, which is really interesting because Adesanya and Costa coming up, we originally thought it was going to be in Vegas. Now I think it's going to be in Abu Dhabi, which will be the bigger cage, and I think that helps Adesanya's case a little bit. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I really thought Cormier was going to go heavy on the wrestling. He said it. I mean, and I took him at his word. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Definitely makes sense to me. And he didn't. You know what I mean? He had a couple of attempts early on, but I do wonder if years down the road or whatever, in retrospect, when he thinks back, he's like, damn, I should have wrestled a lot more. You know what I mean? I thought that was his best path to victory, and he didn't really do it.
Yeah. What was the biggest surprise of the night for you, result-wise?
Let's see. Pull it up. They all blend together.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too since I've been watching. Like sometimes, like the day after, I'm trying to reminisce on the fights. I'm like, but there was like 10 of them.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, listen, okay. I mean, of course, Sean O'Malley, that happening to him. I mean, listen, I thought there was a real chance that Cheeto could win the fight. I thought that he was, a live underdog. A lot of people thought, this is just O'Malley's latest victim. I definitely did not feel that way. But, certainly you hate to see it go down the way it did with kind of an injury, and you wonder where O'Malley's going to be. Daniel Pineda beating Herbert Burns and really kind of dominating Herbert Burns. I thought that was a bit surprising there. I thought, Herbert Burns, not that he's, the next Gilbert Burns, you can't, measure him the same as his brother, but he definitely looked like a strong prospect, and he just got dominated there. So that would probably be the most surprising. O'Malley, not necessarily the fact he lost, but the way he went, and then the Pineda upset of Burns. I just did not see that coming at all.
That one completely blew my mind because I had seen Burns' last fight. He looked really good there. And then I think I didn't realize until after the fight when they were interviewing Pineda, where they said he hadn't been in the UFC for 6 years?
Yeah, man. Think about that. I mean, the story that he had, it's crazy, and to come back and get a win like that, pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he absolutely demolished Burns. Like my mouth was open that entire fight. I'm like, what's going on?
Complete domination, man. Yeah, that was definitely a shocking result to say the least.
I thought the prelims were pretty good as well for 252.
No, I agree. I thought it was good. I mean, obviously Vince Pichel defeating Jim Miller. I mean, Jim's been around forever. Anytime you get a chance to watch him fight, but I thought Pichel did what he had to do to win there. I mean, the first fight of the night, man, Kai Kamaki and Tony Kelly, like they just came out banging from the start. I'm like, dude, this is fight number one. Like we're gonna be all right. And it's so crazy, man. Like in the fanless environments that we have now, man. Like it's wild. What I've been saying, like the MMA without fans. I think the conclusion I've come to is that for lower level fights, it's actually better. It's more enjoyable to me because like you can hear every shot. You can, you can hear the coaches, you can hear the fighters talk to themselves, you can hear everything. And I love that aspect of it, and you don't have, random fans booing or saying dumb stuff like they do. So to be honest, I kind of like it on the lower tier fights. Then when you get to the bigger fights though, you kind of miss that like buzz, I think about like the last fight with fans, the feeling of the arena when with Joanna and Jacek and Zhang Wei Li, like, dude, like everybody's just going, crazy every shot. Like you miss that. I mean, even, to read out the results of a title fight and it's, it's the heavyweight title and the trilogy and it's just like,
silence.
Nothing. It's weird. So I like the experience of the lower tier fights, but I miss the buzz and the energy that a crowd brings to it. There's the big fights for sure.
Yeah. Did you? So I was trying to catch it on the replays. I didn't quite see it. So when initially when Sean got hurt, I thought it was from that little slip trip, whatever it was. That's what I initially saw. And then I was reading a bunch of people saying he's like, no, he took a shot to the shin. That's what seemed to have caused it. And then the rollover was a result of the shin kick. I didn't catch the shin kick. What did you see?
Yeah, man, it's funny. I was telling somebody the other day, like, I feel like I've been breaking this thing down like this is a Pruder film, man, going through like frame by frame, trying to figure out what happened. But no, so there is like Chito Vera lands a low kick like right to the knee area, but it's weird. Like you can't really see how clear it lands. But I think that's what most people are believing, and it seems to be is that peroneal nerve, I believe it's called, the one that's behind the knee, like it kind of deadens and you lose function. We saw it with Brent Primus and Michael Chandler is the most famous example of it. But that's kind of this new weapon that people are using with those calf kicks and those. I think that's what it was for, because if you look like 4 or 5 seconds later, like that's when he has like. He doesn't flop all the way, but his foot kind of rolls a little bit as he's stepping. I just wish we had we haven't seen like more angles and more replays of it, and it's difficult to see too because understandably they're kind of zoomed in a little bit. So during that whole sequence of events, you're not really seeing every step that he takes and seeing like his footwork and because the only thing I can think, if it's not that shot, the only thing I can think is before that he landed 2 kicks of his own that potentially could have injured his own foot, like on a check, you know what I mean? Like, but it was funny. I saw him take the little kind of a weird step, and you even see Chito look at it and kind of like, so you see that he acknowledges it. But I think it's from that low kick that Chito Vera threw that kind of to the knee area. But it's just hard to say definitively because that one camera angle, you can't really see how clean it landed.
Yeah, I'm curious to see now that Sean's had 2. We don't know definitively yet what the injury was, but 2 at least possibly identical or similar injuries to the same ankle foot area. You know, I mean, you cover the sport more, so you obviously see how his personality is. Like, he's pretty. I find him funny, but he also has a confidence. He has like a swagger to him. But two rough ones like that, and then he had, I think it was like an incident with USADA. So I wonder, after all that, does he still come out on the other side, the same guy, or does he kind of maybe take a step back in the talking department? I'm curious to see what he's going to look like after.
It's going to be a big test, right? I mean, to see how he stays. Like, yeah, the USADA thing was a big mental drain for him, and he's admitted as much, But this, and I think about it with guys that have had like multiple issues with like their hands, and all of a sudden you can see they're kind of hesitant to let their hands go because they're afraid, of breaking their hands. They've done it multiple times, and this is the same thing. He said afterwards it was the same injury that he had before. So we'll see, like you said, if it's chronic, if it's something like, is he always going to be concerned at throwing kicks with that or stepping the wrong way on that? I hope it's something that's not going to linger with him through his whole career, because the kid's definitely got skills, and like you said, man, he's got swagger. He moves the needle, man. The kid's marketable, you know what I mean? Like some people hate him, you know what I mean? But a lot of people love him, But that's all that's what's great, I mean, they always say, apathy is the worst thing, right? You know what I mean? You don't want to have fights. You just go, whatever, I don't care. No, it's like either you want to tune in because you're like, that's my guy, and I want to see him win, or you want to tune in because you're like, I hate that dude and I want to see him get knocked out. You know what I mean? But as long as you care, that's what matters. And I think Sean was one of those guys that really, like, man, one way or another, like you want to watch the kid. He's going to put on a show. So, man, just fingers crossed. He's a young kid, that this isn't something that's going to linger with him and cause issues.
Yeah, I mean, while you were kind of describing that in terms of like people want to see either that type of person get knocked out or get their hand raised. Well, that's kind of what we saw with Colby Covington, right? The story, it's a pretty, I mean, if you follow him, like the story is pretty well known at this point. He going into the fight against, was it against Barbosa? No, it was not. It was another Brazilian fighter. He was fighting someone, and then going into the fight, apparently he was told, "This is your last one. We're not re-signing you. This is the last fight of his contract." And he just went, kicked his butt, and then talked some smack to the whole country in Brazil. And then it's like, well, now we got to sign this guy.
Yeah, man.
And now, since then, he's completely taken that direction and ran with it.
He has, man, and it's crazy. I was there that night, man. They were worried for his safety, man. They had security. They had security with him, like from that point on until like he literally was on the plane going home. They had security detail with him the whole time. But yeah, dude, it's a little bit manufactured, but he got it. You know what I mean? Like he understood like entertainment value, man. I don't care if people hate me or whatever, So he kind of just started going with the MAGA hat and just going with this gimmick and it's so funny because like behind the scenes, Colby is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet, man. Like he shows up early to everything. He's not on time. He's like early to everything, and he'll be like, "Hey, man, how you doing? How's the kid doing?" You know what I mean? Like he remembers very much like Chael Sonnen used to be. Chael Sonnen was the same way back in the day. Like Chael's one of the smartest, brightest guys, one of the nicest people ever. I always tell people the story because it's funny. Like Chael would you do an interview with him. And obviously Chael's been kind of a mentor to Colby, so it shouldn't surprise people. But Chael was funny. Like you do an interview with him, and he'd come at you. You know what I mean? He'd just start yelling at you and be like, "Man, that's the stupidest question. I can't even believe you have a job in this industry. Like, what are you doing?" And just go off on you. Like, damn, But then you get done, and he'll send you a text like afterwards, like, "Hey, man, thanks for the time. Great interview. Send me a link when the story's up and stuff like that." And Colby's very much the same way. I mean, look. It's I don't think I'm pulling the curtain back. I think people get it at this point. It's shtick. It's he's playing a character. But man, I mean, you think about like his fighting style. Like his fighting style is effective, but it's it's based on wrestling. It's based on pace. It's not like it's a bunch of knockouts, a bunch of finishes. It's about controlling positioning. Basically, what I'm saying is it's not the most fan friendly style. Like I appreciate it. I'm sure some people, but fans like the rock'em sock'em robots. Go out there and throw until somebody falls. Colby's not that way. And yet he was able to generate so much interest in his fights because of, the willingness to go out there and promote. And, man, it's a lesson to everybody, man. It's a lesson to everybody in this game. And it's kind of sucks sometimes, but it's just true. Like just winning fights isn't enough. It can be, it can get you there eventually, but you will lose out on so many opportunities and so much financial upside if you're one of these people that just says, "Hey, man, I'll just take whoever they give me, just line them up and I'll knock them out." No, you need to stir the pot a little bit and promote yourself. And if you do so, you will maximize your own financial opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed with him, because again, I was going through his fight catalog in the UFC from the beginning and up to that Maia fight, maybe even through that Maia fight. You definitely saw that where it wasn't exactly, again, like I said, fan friendly in terms of like the aesthetic, the look of it, but for him as a fighter, it was very effective. And then, but at least what I noticed was, so that happened. He had his whole, call out there to Brazil, and then the fights post, at least from what I thought I noticed was he started slugging more though. It wasn't it wasn't as wrestling dominant. It seemed. I guess he even made a shift to the fighting style. I mean, he looked pretty good. I mean, he stayed undefeated up until his most recent fight.
Yeah, no, I agree, and especially when you think about the fight with Usman, especially what a thriller that was, and it was all stand up, and that's that happens. So when you have two kind of elite level wrestlers, it's going to cancel each other out. So it's just like, well, hey, he's not going to be able to take me down. I'm not going to be able to take him down. So let's just throw down with strikes. And you're right, man. I think his game is underrated. I think people tend to hate on his skills because they don't like the person he is. And so then they don't, or really I should say they don't like the character that he is, if we're being honest. And because they don't like the character, they don't give his fighting skills enough credit. And I think he is really an elite level fighter. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to the Woodley fight.
Yeah,
absolutely. I just want to see him in the ring again.
I agree, man. I like Colby. Colby, I was at his first fight in the UFC. It was over in Macau, and it was the Ultimate Fighter China finale. He was one of the few English-speaking fighters on the cards. I think he was winning like 6-0 at the time. But I was like, yeah, let me interview this guy because not hardly. He's one of the only people who speaks English. And so when I was researching him, that's when I found out that he was college roommates with John Jones. So I was like, oh, that's an easy story. Like here's the guy that what did he straight up. And it sucks because we weren't doing video at the time, and so I don't have it like on video. But just mentioned it. Hey, college roommates with John Jones. Like that's wild. He's like, that dude was like a drug abusing womanizer. I'm like, whoa, that's the story. That's how you're coming out of the gate in your UFC debut. And, I was like, we'll wait on that one a little bit down the road. We'll let you get to that at another point. But I wish I'd had it on video because from day one, he's just like, I'm saying it. You know what I mean? I don't care.
Yeah. Okay, I have some fan questions for you. Actually, they'll be able to get some from different forums, some people that wanted to ask you some stuff. So for you, what's a dream matchup that you haven't seen happen yet, but you would like to see?
Oh, that's the one that intrigues me the most right now that seems like potentially possible, but not really, is seeing George St. Pierre and Khabib Nurmagomedov, man. I love it. It seems like it's out there a little bit. I don't know it's going to happen, but the idea of what would be on the line there. I mean, obviously the undefeated record if he gets through Justin Gaethje, which that's no guarantee.
That's no joke, yeah.
If Khabib was undefeated and then GSP was coming back, and especially if it could be at lightweight, which GSP said he can make it to lightweight. If GSP is coming out of retirement for his third title, and becoming the first man to ever do that, and then to do it, be trying to do it against the undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov, who's trying to retire at 30. I mean, dude, that would be unbelievable. So that'd be one right now that it's not like totally fantasy. Like maybe it could happen, but I feel like it's kind of tough to pull it together. But that would be amazing.
So you've definitely seen GSP fight more than I have. So he hasn't fought much though in the last 5-6 years, maybe once or twice, because he was I think hurt.
Yeah. Well, no, he retired from the sport and he came back and he won the title and then he retired again.
Yeah, right. So when I saw that, I'm like, well, at least name wise, I've watched all of Khabib's fight at this point, but GSP's I've only seen a couple. The couple that I watched, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can obviously tell why he's revered the way he is, and Khabib, of course, the same. But so I'm looking at that and I see, okay, well, this man, as great as he has only fought once or twice in the past several years. Yeah. Let's say that does happen, he does come back. What's the quality of the fight going to be like? And again, it still might be fantastic, but I'm curious if that were to happen, that's the thing I'm looking for.
That's a fair question. That's a fair question. The thing that's different about Georges St-Pierre is even though he's not competing, he's still been training the whole time. Like this dude
he looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a martial artist through and through. Like it's a lifestyle for him. It's not like he's one of those guys. It's like, well, I'm not in camp, so I'm out drinking and partying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, he's committed to it. So I think it would still be very high level. I mean, you think about what he did to come back and beat Michael Bisping to claim the middleweight belt. But it is interesting. When you talk about how much he's been out, I mean, there is probably there's a whole generation of new fans of the sport that probably have no idea who Georges St-Pierre is, or at least have just heard the name, don't really know the fighting record and those sort of things. So I could see for some reason, I could see some people being like, why do I care? But I think they would do a good job of telling the story. I mean, there is obviously so much history with Georges St-Pierre and his standing in the sport. I mean, you're talking about, you're literally talking about two of the greatest of all time potentially going at it. I mean, that would be pretty special. So I don't know that it'll happen, but it would be pretty cool.
It would be. Okay. What's the most memorable press moment for you? You were the one handling the interview or whatever it may have been.
Oh, God, I hate to say it, man, but I hesitate. The time that the time that Vitor Belfort told people to beat me up in Portuguese, that was pretty memorable. Because it was so weird. And I hate telling it because I like Vitor a lot, and he's apologized profusely since then. I know he's embarrassed by it, and we're good buddies now. And it was it was just an interesting time when he was kind of going through all the TRT stuff, and it was that era of the sport. So that was pretty wild. So that's definitely a memorable one for me. I guess a more recent one was the whole super necessary thing with Jorge Masvidal, because that was my question that kind of gave birth to the super necessary. And it was funny because I remember afterward thinking I don't even think necessary is a word I use that much in my vocabulary. So why did I say it that day? I don't know, but and he hit up with the super necessary, and that became a hashtag. So that was pretty cool, I guess, to be a little tiny part of that brand for him, so to speak.
What provoked that response from Belfort?
So at the time, man, Vitor, it was the TRT area back when it was okay to do it, but it seemed like a lot of people were skirting around it a little bit, maybe using a little too much. I mean, you go back and look at the pictures of him during that era, man, it was crazy. But he knocked out Luke Rockhold and spinning back kick, beautiful kick. And in the press conference, I just asked him, I was like, listen, is it frustrating to you? Because all I could see on social media was people going, yeah, but TRT, TRT. And so in the press conference, I asked him, is it frustrating as a martial artist that you have this beautiful technique, this beautiful execution, and all anybody wants to talk about is the TRT? I mean, obviously, it's clearly doing something for you physically, but that didn't help you throw that kick. It didn't help you with your timing. It didn't help you with your technique, And I thought it would be a fair way to ask him to address it.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, I thought it was the right way, and he obviously didn't take too kindly at the time, and luckily I don't understand Portuguese, so I didn't understand exactly what he was saying, but people explained it to me afterwards. He was basically bad talking me and saying that somebody should beat me up for being here and asking a dumb question like that. So that was memorable, but it was weird. As chance would have it, man, I want to say 2 months later, because this is back when the UFC was doing 7 or 8 Brazilian shows a year. I did 29 trips to Brazil over the course of a couple years, and we happened to be on a plane together 2 months later, literally sitting across each other sitting across the aisle from each other. And so we sat and had a 3-hour conversation on the flight, and he was very man, I'm sorry. You know, I know that you weren't trying to attack me, and you know, it was fair what you asked, and I'm so
That's good.
sorry. And you know, and you know, he's a religious guy, a very religious guy as well. So I think he's kind of embarrassed. Like obviously, that's not the way a proper Christian would speak to other people or whatever the case may be. So I think,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, he's super kind. So that's why I kind of hate telling the story because like I know that it embarrasses him, and I know that you know like we're cool now. But hey, it was definitely memorable.
Okay, so that's most memorable press moment. How about most memorable fighter you've met? We know whether it be through interview or whatever it may have been.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, Conor McGregor's got to be up there, man. Watching his whole rise, you know, met him before his UFC debut. He had actually come to the MMA Junkie radio studios when he was fighting for Cage Warriors because we actually used to stream Cage Warriors events on MMA Junkie
Really?
before they were on Fight Pass. So like he had come to the studio in Vegas, and so we knew him, and I met him and talked to him, and man, just watching his whole development was amazing. I mean, the coming in and you know the story of him like almost missing the flight to his first fight because he wanted to go get his social welfare check of 189 euros, dude. Like, that's crazy,
Wow.
man. Like, they almost were late to the airport because he's like, no, I got to get my welfare check. To now, you know, fighting Floyd Mayweather and $100 million and just crazy, man. So his rise was amazing. I mean, Tony Ferguson, obviously an incredibly memorable character. I remember, like, the first time, you know, he coming off the Ultimate Fighter, you know, the Ultimate Fighter finale, like he was already like wearing the shades and the suit, and I'm like, who is this guy, dude? Like, this dude is crazy, you know. And then, but you really start. So at first I'm like, well, this dude's weird, and then I'm like, no, man, I like him a lot, you know. Diego Sanchez, you know, it's such an interesting character to cover over the years, and all that he's gone through. So I mean, dude, so many like so forth. It's a great sport when it comes to characters and people, you know.
Yeah. So when you met Connor before the rise, was he as confident then as he is now?
Yeah, no question. I mean, that was a cool thing about it, man. Like I've always said, man, like you can tell in somebody when you've done this enough, man, you can tell people who truly believe in themselves
Mhm.
versus people who like are trying to hype themselves up to make themselves believe it. You know what I mean? Like you can tell like who really has that faith and that confidence. And man, with Connor, it was always there, man. It really was. And that's a special quality, man, because dude, as we talked about earlier, you know, the mental side of this, man, it's such a strong part of it. And like, man, that confidence in yourself. I always get mad. I always get mad when people say, "Oh, that dude's like cocky." Like, man, if you're gonna lock yourself in a steel cage with another human being who is hell bent on doing physical damage to you, you should probably have pretty supreme confidence in yourself. You know what I mean?
Good point.
So yeah, so never fault somebody for being too confident, man. They gotta have that. But man, like I said, you can tell, I think, when people really have it versus people are like kind of trying to make themselves believe it. And Connor always had that, man. He had that mindset was, it still is. You know, I don't think he's done fighting, man. It's pretty unique because, man, this is a sport where you question yourself. I mean, dude, everybody will tell you, you know, Cowboy Cerrone is one of my favorite, you know, fighters that I've covered. I mean, just, you know, anybody, anywhere, anytime, like that guy lives it. And you hear him talk about it, you know, before every damn fight, he's in the locker room, you know, like about to puke and wondering like, why do I do this? Like, what am I doing?
Wow.
I'm crazy. You know, I mean, so I mean, there's just no way you can't question yourself at least a little bit. So
Right.
to have that type of like real supreme self-confidence, man, it's a huge help.
Yeah. You alluded to it. You're not sure, and you're not entirely sure if this is the end for Connor. I'm not sure either. But what was a few weeks ago? The little chirping between him and Khamzat. Uh, if that happens, I think that'd be pretty cool. I don't know if that will actually happen. When you kind of saw that, what were you thinking?
I don't think Conor McGregor wants any part of Khamzat Chimaev, if I'm being honest, man. You know,
I don't
like,
think anyone does.
no, man, that dude is legit. I like Khamzat so much, man. You know, Ali Abdelaziz, his manager, had told me about Khamzat, and I'd seen some of his highlight tapes because he was so high on this kid, and then he comes and does that in the UFC. And I like Khamzat as well because he doesn't speak great English, but it's like just enough. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's that beautiful like, you know, Habib, just you know, line up, I smash all, you know, it's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
great, man. I love it. That dude's dangerous. So yeah, I don't think Connor wants any part of that because, you know, let's be honest. I mean, Khamzat is not a star yet. I mean, to us that are dialed into the sport, like, hell yeah, man, it's like we see the potential there, but he's
Mhm.
still got to do some things. You know what I mean? So I like the back and forth. It just goes to show you, man, if Connor's willing to engage with you, I mean, he must see something in you if he's even willing to go down
That's a
that
good point.
road. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, otherwise, if he thought you were a chump, you know, he'd just be like, what are you talking about? You know, and just
Yeah.
ignore it, you know? So to kind of shoot down like that, I think he must see something special if he's willing to commit any of his time to it.
Well, the craziest thing, seeing some of Khamzat's highlights, and I think he even did this maybe in both the fights in the UFC. I might be remembering wrong. When he just picks up his opponent and just like walks them over to the corner and then just beats them down.
It's so crazy. And the thing is, like, if you go watch his highlight reels, like, he's got hands too. Like, he can strike as well. So
Oh,
he's gonna bother some people on the feet. But yeah, dude, it's so demoralizing. Like, dude, just
You're
literally
just
just
a grown
like,
man is getting picked up and
that's
just
it,
walked
man.
across.
And you're just not getting back up. Like, I'm just sitting on top of you and you're not getting back up. No matter what you try to do, you're stuck here. Like, oh, it's just got to be so maddening.
Yeah. I think I know the answer to this. I'll ask anyway. So you obviously get the first. You generally it seems like you're getting the first question during these post conferences. So how's your relationship with Dana?
It's good, man. Yeah, it's good. Listen, like anybody, we've had our little tiffs over the years, man. I mean, there's been some screaming phone calls at me and stuff like that. But overall, man, we have a really good relationship. I think that I think he appreciates the fact that I know he knows how many years I've been doing this and how long I've been committed to it. And I think he knows that I'm passionate about telling the story the right way. And listen, he's I think he also appreciates the fact that when there are tough questions to ask, I try to do it in the most tactful manner. Like, I'm not attacking. And I think that's a big key, man, is if to anybody who's doing this, like, you can ask whatever you want, man. You can ask about anything to anybody, but just try to phrase it the right way. You know what I mean? If you're putting somebody on the defensive or they feel attacked, like, they're not going to give you a good answer anyway if they're just feeling on the defensive. So, I think it's good. So, we're not like boys that hang out or anything like that. Obviously he's in a different world than me, that's for sure. But yeah, overall we have a solid relationship for sure.
That's good. Is there any woman you think that can beat Amanda Nunes? I don't think there is, but I'm curious if you think there is.
Man, not right now. No.
Yeah.
I don't, man. I just that's no disrespect to the contenders at 35 and 45. I'm not trying to disrespect them, but to me, she just seems to be on a different level right now.
Yeah.
So, I thought Cyborg had the best shot, and then we saw what happened there, man. That was such a memorable fight, man. So crazy. So no, right now I hate to say it. It's a fight. Anything can happen, but that's like, it's like, picking against John Jones or picking against Demetrius Johnson, or, you know what I mean? Like, you're not disrespecting the other person. It's just, man, when you've seen somebody dominate, it's hard to see,
Yeah. This one, I hadn't even heard of this league before, but I think you mentioned it earlier. Someone asked, who's the biggest name that came out of Tachi Palace?
Yeah, man. Well, Juicio Formiga was there. Ian McCall was there. I can't remember if Benavidez fought there or not. We had some really good fights. They had some great fights. Mamoru Yamaguchi fought there. So there was a time before the UFC was in the flyweight business space, before they had a flyweight division. The Tachi Palace fights kind of went and decided they were going to make the world's best 125-pound division, and they did it, man. They had like these guys that were ranked in these smaller organizations over in Japan and here, and they had some great fights, man, in the 125-pound division. So I think that flyweight division. I mean, there was a time that they had the top flyweights in the world in this little tiny ballroom in Lemoore, California, man. So, but I mean, Tachi Palace, when you the history, I mean, that was the birthplace of the WC as well. So there's been a bunch of great fights out there, man. That's a fighting area, man. It's a fun small organization for sure.
Cool. We were kind of talking about this before we started rolling. So I had seen, so obviously, like I said, I noticed, like, who's this guy that keeps getting the first question? Found out it was you. And then I think this question has been asked, like, how's this guy keep getting the first question? And then I think I saw a screenshot of, I think it's also a journalist, I forget their name, and they said just John's been in this business for such a long time, and he's very respected, where it's kind of like a unspoken thing where it's like John's going first. Yeah. Does that sound about right to you?
It's right. So it's kind of funny, like the way it really started was, I mean, the way it, I guess, kind of became almost like official, if you want to say that. I mean, it's not official, but it's just kind of the way it is. But I mean, I would always be, like you said, I've been doing this a long time, and I would always be I was the first one. I mean, I still try to be the first one that shows up to check in, the last one there. I mean, I try to put in as many hours. And I would always have, be the first one, at a press conference. Hey, who's got questions? Hand in the air. They'll bring the mic. But basically, there came a point in time, and I'm pretty sure it was Dave Schaller, former PR guy that's working for the 76ers now. Because what would happen is we'd have like these press conferences, and Danny would get up there and be like, all right, who's got the first question? And then you'd have to like get the microphone and move it around. People trying to get to you, and it just there's like this awkward pause. And there was even a couple times I remember Dana was like, "What? Nobody has a question?" It's like, "No, we have a question. We're just trying to get the mic right now." So finally, I think Schaller was just like, "Hey, listen," he's like, "when we start these press conferences, so we can get rid of that weird pause." He's like, "Can you just have the mic in your hand already? Like, I'll just give it to you beforehand, and like I know that I can trust you to ask like a good question to start us out." And I'm like, yeah, of course. So it just kind of became like a mechanical thing, like, oh, it'll make sure the start of these press conferences. But then it just kind of became tradition, and like now, I mean, Schaller's been gone for years at this point, but yeah, now it's just kind of like, it's just I think everybody trusts me to not say anything too stupid, and you know, try to get the fight. I mean, I've got, you know, a lot of these fighters recognize me, of course, you know, because I've been covering their career for years, so you can kind of get them in a good mood a little bit, you know, get the ball rolling a little bit. So that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, I think your response started to kind of remind me. Schmo had interviewed you at one of those MMA awards on the red carpet. I think he maybe asked you something similar, and I think you gave like a similar response.
Yeah, he might have. I forgot about that. Yeah, I totally forgot. Yeah. I did talk to him one time on the red carpet. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure how much you follow him, but so I became aware of him fairly recently. I think like that's because journalism's pretty traditional, I would say, for the most part, like how it's done. Like the personalities, the media people, like you have some of like the Skip Baylesses, for example, right? That kind of have like the shouting matches and stuff like that. But it's generally the same type of setting. So when I saw Schmo, and he even puts it like in his description, like trying to bring like a breath of fresh air to journalism, and it's unique. You know, you have this guy that has like a dual personality thing. When he's interviewing you or the fighters, whoever, he comes out with this, you know, this character, and then when he's doing his podcast, he's Dave. He's like his regular person.
Right.
When you see, you know, you've seen something like that, and maybe future people that come up, is that encouraging to you? Seeing like a new kind of take on things. How do you feel when you see things like that?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, that's not my style. Like I would never, you know, embrace that style, but I can respect him for doing it. The thing I always said with Schmo in particular, you know, was when he first came on the scenes. Like, you know, even though we kind of saw his shtick or his character like real quick, I always appreciate the fact that he kind of waited until like everybody else was done. And so like, you know, when we're doing like scrums or media things, like he's not trying to interrupt, you know, for those of us that are doing kind of more traditional stuff that do need the coverage and like make it all about him, or because I've seen that before. Like, you know, say like you're trying to do some pre-fight interviews and there's like some local radio DJ or something that's doing like some kind of bit, you know what I mean? You're like, dude, can you stop? Like we're actually like doing real work here. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I always say, like I respected him for that. Because like, even though he knew he was kind of doing this character thing or whatever, that he didn't try to interrupt anybody else or prevent us from being able to get the kind of coverage that we needed. So yeah, you know, like I said, it's not a role that I would ever find myself in, but you know, if you can pull it off and do it and do it in the right way, then yeah, I think there's space for everybody, right? I mean, this is
right.
This is you know, it's sports, but it's entertainment too, and I think, you know, there's opportunities for everybody.
Yeah. To segue from that, since obviously you're as successful as you are where you're at right now, what are some tidbits you would give to aspiring sports journalists that whenever you reflect on your own career, like, oh man, if I knew it then, this would have saved me this much time?
I mean, first and foremost, just do it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I always tell people, man, get as much practice as you can. So like, if you want to write, if you want to podcast, if you whatever it is you want to do, just start doing it, man. Like, even if it's not for anybody, even if it's just like for some blog that you're doing yourself, just do it, man. At least you'll get those reps, you'll get that practice. And the more you do things, the more comfortable you get at it, the better you're going to be. So kind of hone your craft a little bit, you know? And, you know, I always say, man, just work hard, man. Put in the effort. Like that's the one thing you can control, man, is your, you know, your dedication and your work ethic, man. If you can outwork other people, you know, maybe they're a little more skilled or a little more talented than you are, but you're outworking them, that goes a long way, man. So work hard. And I always tell people too, you know, if you're trying to get a start somewhere, cover your local scene. Start with your local scene. You know what I mean? It's hard to, you know, to try to, you know, beat an MMA junkie, you know, and you know, we've got resources and staffs and that sort of thing. So, but if you can do something kind of unique and again, start locally, those are organizations, athletes, people that are dying for coverage, you know what I mean? And so they'd appreciate, you know, a small spotlight being shown, and then you end up developing relationships that, who knows, maybe that person will make it to the UFC someday. And now you know, they'll remember you from way back when, and you were the only one that give them any time, you know? So, I think those are all, you know, kind of things that you can do. To me though, man, there's really no just like magic bullet or, you know, here's the key to success. It's just, man, it's working hard. It's clean, you know, copy, whatever it is you're doing, you know, making sure that your editor doesn't have a ton of work to do, that's trying to correct your stuff and fix it. I mean, just be on time with stuff. I always say too, man, like don't ever write or say or do anything that you wouldn't say to somebody's face. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you kind of mentioned like you know, I'm not that I'm trying to single out like Skip Bayless or people like, but you know, people now it's like,
Yeah, right.
what's your you know, you got to have that hot take, man. You
Yeah,
got to
right.
have that you got to be dropping that straight fire. I mean, that's cool. I mean, it works for some people, but I just wouldn't recommend it, man. Like if you're saying something for the simple rise or to get a rise out of people, man, like that's not going to serve you well in the long run, man. You're going to get a bad reputation, and people in the business are going to see that, and they're not going to want to do anything with you. So that's not going to help your cause. I say, not that you can't be critical. It's not like you got to pretend like everybody's the greatest fighter in the history of the world or the, you know what. No, you can be critical and you can be honest, but don't say or do anything, you know, especially like social media. Like, understand, like that's not just like free space or whatever. Like, that's still connected to your name, and people will see it. You know what I mean? So don't do anything that you wouldn't be willing to say to an athlete's face, for instance, and being honest. You know.
Awesome. Last one for you. So we were talking about earlier when you were in the restaurant business and you decided, you know, I want to actually do this. Would you say that was like the most difficult period of time for you, kind of handling those two things? And if not, how did you deal with your most difficult period of time? How did you overcome it to ultimately continue where you're at now?
Yeah, that was tough, man. Like balancing the two was really, really tough, you know, because for what, man, I didn't have a day off for like 6 months, you know what I mean? Because I was always working one job or the other. So there was never any, you know, any time to rest or reflect. I mean, it was just always grind. That was tough. And again, you know, just not wanting to, I mean, I had a stable job, a stable income, a stable everything that I had a good history with, and it's scary, you know what I mean? To be like, I'm ready to cut ties with all this, you know, and I'm ready to walk away from it in the effort of chasing this dream, so to speak. And so, yeah, that was tough, man. And then there were tough days too, and I was trying to get used to that half salary, man. you gotta make some changes to the budgeting. You know, you get used to the comforts of your income level, you know. And so those were tough, but man, I think just being happy about what I was doing and feeling like rewarded of like, man, like, yes, like I am doing exactly what I want to be doing right now. I think that helped, you know, overcome any of the things. You'll figure out a way, man. You'll figure out a way to make it work, whether it be trimming expenses, whether it be, you know, hustling on the side to get some side gigs to make a little extra money here and there, whatever it may be. You'll find a way to get it done. So yeah, that to me is just staying at it, man. I think in terms of getting through difficult times, it's just believing in it. You know what I mean? If that's really what you want to do, believing in yourself and knowing like, I'm going to make this work, and hopefully, you know, whoever you've got around you has your back too. You know, obviously if you got people around you that aren't supporting you and that are like, man, I don't know, like that's not helpful to anybody. You know what I mean? So hopefully you have good supportive people around you, and I did, fortunately. But just, stay in the path, believing in yourself and knowing that like nobody's going to stop me until I get exactly what I want. Like that can take you a long way.
Fantastic. John, that's it for me, man. That's all I got for you. I really appreciate the time. This was awesome. It was great shooting it with you about the sport, and kind of now, you know, hearing a little bit more about the background, how the great disseminator got to where he's at. So yeah, again, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for making the time. Enjoy the week off in a way until the next event.
I appreciate it. No, man, enjoy doing it, and thank you, man. And obviously, man, feel free to hit me up anytime. If you ever want to talk some MMA, it is not hard to get me to talk about MMA, as you probably see.
Yeah, I can tell that. So go ahead. I hope you can go get yourself a frosty one now.
That's the plan.
Yeah, and then I'll shoot this to you once we have it. I'm hoping we can maybe get it out this weekend. I'll shoot it over to you as well.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Awesome. Great. Thanks again, John.
See you, bro.
Have a great day. Bye.